My name is Councilwoman Helen Anthony, and I am calling the regular meeting of the Finance Committee to order. And it is Tuesday, January 24th, and it is almost 5:30, a little after. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Helen D'Antoni.
Present.
Vice Chairman Juan Pichardo.
Present.
Councilman James Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Sue Engelbart.
Present.
Councilor Miguel Sanchez.
Present.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'd also like to introduce our clerks, Julie Blanco and Angela Harris. And also we have our deputy city solicitor, Ken Cheverini, who is attending via YouTube. Madam Clerk, would you read the first item?
Item number 1, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 3rd, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1006 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, has amended, he is this day appointing Jonathan R. Martin of 99 Mary Street, Newport, Rhode Island, 02840, to the position of Director of the Department of Public Property, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Would you please swear to minutes?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your position for the record.
Jonathan Robert Martin, Director of Public Property.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. It's nice to see you. How many times have we seen you?
This is the third in 3 weeks, Madam Chair.
With every week, I think you probably know just a little more, but tonight we're here to talk to you about your appointment as Director of Department of Public Property. And if you could just briefly, we have your resume, but if you just ever so briefly give us a little bit about your background.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you tonight and answer your questions. A little of my background: I grew up in northern New Jersey. My father was a civil servant. My mother was a social worker. I graduated high school and then went to college, during which time in upstate New York, during which time I was enrolled in Army ROTC. So in 2001, when I graduated my undergraduate, I commissioned into the Army as an armor officer, during which time I served 21 years globally, and as an armor officer conducted missions around the world, really solving complex problems and leading great Americans doing complex things. My last assignment was as a military professor at the U.S. Naval War College, which is what brought me to Rhode Island and specifically Newport. So my wife and I arrived here just under 2 years ago, and we absolutely love Rhode Island. So we're super happy, and it's very familiar to me as a state. And we also love Providence. When we first arrived, my wife actually worked up here for a while, and now she's works down in Newport, and I'm working up here. And we love the state, and we love Providence. So that's a little of my background, and look forward to answering your questions.
I'm going to open it to the committee first. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Martin? Councilman.
Not so much a question, but just welcome to Rhode Island. I think like many of us, we fall in love with little Rhode Island from New Jersey, New York, and other places. And once we get here, we don't want to leave, right? And also thank you for your service. I know that acquiring all the skills and leadership skills is it's a great thing to have you in the administration and serving our citizens here in Providence. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, just a quick question. So one, everything Pro Tem said, and as a fellow Jersey transplant, welcome. Excited to also have more Jersey right here. Why public property? What brought you to this role in city government, if you don't mind asking?
Well, Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you. Great question. As I was transitioning out of the Army last fall, I'm really fascinated with complex problems. I'm fascinated with urbanism, and I'm fascinated with political science as scholarship, as a scholar. So as I was looking for opportunities, came across several, and one of them happened to be public property. I think what really interests me, and in my first few weeks here, that I love about the position is that the breadth across the city, that we enable all the other departments of the city, in addition to enabling the citizens. And I'm very interested in infrastructure and program and project management. So that's why I was interested in this position.
Awesome. If I could add one more?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Just to ask, I would love to in the future work with you as we look at public property. In the past, the Office of Sustainability has been under public property. That's currently now its own department, which is fantastic, but would love to work with you on all sorts of things related to energy efficiency and climate in our buildings, making sure that we're powered by renewables and maximizing our energy efficiency. So would love if you're open to that in the future.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, absolutely thank you, Councilwoman, for the question. It's been great to meet the sustainability team. Understand they are separate from our department, but we've already had several engagements and fully look forward to addressing those concerns, sustainability, energy efficiency, moving forward, if I'm given the honor of being approved. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you for your service, Jonathan, and putting yourself out there. This is completely a different role from what you've done in your past, but it seems like you have a lot of experience in terms of managing complex issues, situations. So like yourself, there's some of us here that are learning as we go. It's our third week in the job as well. But just quickly, have you notified or identified any key priorities in the department that you would like to have your full attention right away, or are you still kind of intaking the whole system?
Well, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Councilman, thank you very much for the question. I still am very much in the assessment phase in terms of priorities, and the mayor's priorities being schools is on the top of the list. In accordance with his priorities. But as we look at schools and the capital investment program, and then the other facilities, we're really organizing the facilities, fleets, and purchasing. So in terms of the rack and stack of the priorities of which one is going to take more of my effort as an individual leader, I'm still in the assessment phase, but I would say very much at this point, I know that schools and the projects currently underway would be at the top of the list.
Thank you.
I guess, go ahead.
Just to be true in essence in that, I know that by the third day you're already on the job and we already have met on a couple of topics, and particularly private property in my district. So thank you for that. And I know it's going to be, as we say, learning curve, getting to know the lay of the land. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, and put on the record, in essence of the discussion about the participation of minority business enterprise and women business enterprise, and how they interject with other departments, and do you have any ideas, or at least have some thoughts on how do we improve on that, and how can we actually make it more effective?
Well, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Councilman, thank you for the question. As we've had some previous discussions along this line, it is something I have started to take a look at to understand the processes that are in place and the synchronization across departments and as a city, how we're advancing those goals. I would say at this time, I'd like a little more time to understand it a little bit more. From what I understand at this point, we do advertise for minority and women participation. But at this point, I would love the opportunity to come back and present you a little more detailed ideas of what I think would be a plan moving forward, you and any members of the council.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Any other questions from committee members? For one thing, I'd like to say I like the term rack and stack.
Yeah.
Which will become a favorite of mine.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I'm just going to say we've had a lot of turnover in this particular department.
Mm-hmm.
The director has turned over so many times. So it's been very difficult for us as council in the past to have any continuity in terms of planning, or even to understand what is being prioritized and how we're moving forward with our projects. So I will say that school construction on projects are going to be a focus of ours, because we feel that we have not, at least I'm speaking for the prior council, have not had really any transparency into that process. And we're very interested in how the priorities are made and data that they rely on and anything that you can help us with. So we understand that the monies that have been allocated for school construction I know they're being spent appropriately in terms of the projects that have been identified. I feel that we have excellent management. It seems to be that we're on budget. We have no clarity as to how those projects were selected. And I just, we'd like that kind of depth of explanation on the school construction projects. Also, I have to say that I think Demo Roberts, when he was director of public property, really had a great tool on the website for our capital improvement projects. So that the citizens if you can find it on the website, which is always my issue, I can never exactly find it on the website once I got there. It really was an excellent tool in terms of really, a lot of depth and detail in each one of the projects. The school projects, I think, were also included, but all the capital improvement projects the city's working on, what stage they're at, those kind of things. So I would really open and transparent governance is what we're really hoping to achieve and focus on, and that would go a long way to so the public can actually access a list and see where we are with the project. So I would really encourage you to continue with that if at all possible and share the link. I think you're going to share the link with me again because for some reason I can't find it. So I guess those are just my thoughts. We're thrilled that you're here. We're thrilled with the background you have, and I know that you have a lot of energy, and we're going to expect great things from you. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Absolutely. On the transparency and the depth of how projects are determined is something that my staff and we owe you and the council moving forward. And in terms of the website, I will follow up in terms of where there was a disconnect to getting you that information, but we are actively updating and have established systems to make sure that we stay on top of keeping that updated forward, and we'll ensure that you get the link moving forward, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Great. Okay, with that, may I entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Jonathan Martin as the Director of the Department of Public Property.
May I have a second? Motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Protem. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We will be moving this up with a recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 2 into the record?
Item number 2, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 6, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Sections 302B and 1013 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 4550, Sections 1 through 31st, passed in 1987, is this day reappointing Michael Gaddaco of 78 Harrison Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02909, as a general citizenry category member of the City Plan Commission for a term to expire on January 31st, 2028, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Thank you. It's my understanding that Mr. Gazapko is actually chairing the CPC meeting right now, the City Plan Commission meeting, so he's unable to attend tonight's meeting, but we would like to continue this matter to January 31st. And
Make the motion to continue number 2 until January 31st.
motion's made by Councilor Taylor.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Anderblock. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. This matter is continued until January 31st. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 3 into the record?
Item number 3, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 6, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Sections 302B and 1009 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 4550, Sections 1 through 31st, passed in 1987, he is this day reappointing Marcus Mitchell of 135 Abbott Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02906, as the first alternate member of the Zoning Board of Review for a term to expire on January 31st, 2028, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you.
I'd like to have you stand and we'll swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and title for the record, please.
Marcus Mitchell, first alternate, zoning board of review.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you,
For
Madam
your
Chair.
service. If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start with our questions.
Okay, Marcus Mitchell, I have a varied background, scientist, government work, emergency management, Councilman Taylor will appreciate that, and strategy, business owner, so runs the gamut. Lots of varied experience, but I enjoy it all.
And how long have you been serving on the zoning board as the first alternate?
2 years.
And if you wouldn't mind, is there anything you can share with us, your experiences thus far? I mean, I just, volume of business, anything that you have learned that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I would have an opportunity to talk about some of the things that I said, some of my other capacities, as we all are concerned with the housing crisis and how that impacts the community and members of the community. So I've seen some stark examples that come through the zoning board with heart-wrenching for me. I've seen parents come to ask for variances to build a property on their lot to house their adult children who can't afford increased rents and can't qualify for a mortgage, but they need some place to live. And I think that's just an indication of the crisis we're in the middle of and that we're all trying to address. So that's one of the things I see here.
And may I ask you, sorry, I'm going to open this in a minute. May I just ask you how often you are actually participating? And I imagine that as first alternative. Are you participating almost in every meeting, or?
Yes, I'd say almost every meeting. So,
is that because people have to recuse themselves, or what, or is it a quorum issue?
Well, we had a member who had health issues, and I took his position while he was ill. We also have sometimes folks need to recuse themselves. So that's where we are. We had someone else who had a death in the family and was grieving, so I took his place.
I'm very glad to hear that, because I think your voice is very valuable on the zoning board, and it's very nice to hear that you, even as an alternate, that you actually are participating in quite a few hearings.
That's very good. Thank you.
Good, good. All right, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Councilwoman Vanderbilt.
Well, I just also want to welcome you here, Mr. Mitchell, proud Ward 3 resident, and you did that last time.
Always gonna throw it in there.
But no, I was very excited to see you be nominated, and the only question I would have, not really for you, but just in general for the process, is given that we have openings on the zoning board, and there'll be more before us today, I would have loved to see you be nominated for a full term, and I don't know if that was something that you, for not just to be a first alternate, to be a full member, since you are participating so regularly. So I don't know if that was something you would have been interested in, had that been on offer, but.
That would be fine with me. The work that I do out in the community, I'm very involved in the community, and any place that I feel that I'm needed or if I'm asked to serve, then I usually accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, yes. go
Not
ahead,
really
Councilor
questions, just a
Sanchez.
comment. I just want to welcome you and thank you for being interested in serving on the zoning board again. I really do appreciate your comment in terms of the housing crisis, because that's what it is, not even just in Providence, across the country.
Across the country.
Yeah.
And I think something that we really do need to put closer to the front in this conversation is our zoning laws. So I think the council and the zoning board, there's a lot of work to do in terms of new development, current development, and even some of our pre-existing laws, for example, like parking minimums and stuff like that. So I do appreciate that is a comment, a priority for you, and I'm looking forward to working together going forward.
Thank you, Council. On that note, I would like to offer a comment about I'm excited about the comprehensive plan that's under review now and how important that is and how that impacts the zoning board of review. Very excited about that conversation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we reappoint Marcus Mitchell as the first alternative member of the zoning board of review.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 4 into the record?
Item number 4, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 10, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1009 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31st, passed in 1987, he is this day appointing Brendan F. Ryan, Squire, of 105 Arbor Drive, Providence, Rhode Island, 02908, to the Zoning Board of Review for a term to expire on January 31st, 2028, and respectfully submits the same for your approval. Mr. Ryan is replacing Mr. Scott Wolf, whose term has expired.
Mr. Ryan, welcome. If you just stay standing and we'll swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your full title for the record.
Brendan Ryan, member, Providence on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. If you can just give us a little synopsis of your background. We have your resume, but if you would tell us a little bit about yourself and also why it is you want to serve on the zoning board.
Certainly. I'll just start by thanking Madam Chair and the honorable members of the committee for taking the time to speak to me about this opportunity. I'm a lifelong resident of Providence. I moved away briefly for college, but when it came time to make a decision about my future, I elected to return to Rhode Island, attend law school here. I wanted to make a difference in Providence, where I'm from. I really care about this city. After I became an attorney, I was at various places. I clerked in the Superior Court on a civil motion calendar. I've always been interested in public service. I've always been interested in development issues. So I, pursued a job at the Department of Transportation. I worked primarily in labor issues. That led me to my current role in private practice, where I'm a labor employment lawyer. But zoning, planning, development, those have always been serious interests of mine. One of my first internships in law school was in the city solicitor's department, working on the zoning board, helping out with land use issues. So my very first experiences in professional life have involved the zoning board. So this is an opportunity I'm really, really excited about. When I saw there was an opening, I applied, and I was honored that the mayor felt that I was an appropriate choice. So very happy to be here.
Any questions?
I don't want to type that. That's the first thing over time.
Counselor Engelbach?
No,
Okay.
you go first.
Oh,
I defer to
are you
the
sure?
councilman.
Three.
Three.
She's
Oh, yeah,
two.
yeah.
Third week, yeah.
Awesome. I have a few questions. Thank you so much for being here, Brendan. So I have 3 questions. The first might be the hardest. It seems like there are 2 different areas where you might experience a potential conflict of interest serving on the zoning board, both as a family member of a certain sitting council person and also as an employee of Adler, Podlick, and Sheehan. And we just heard from Mr. Mitchell that there have been times where he has needed to serve because people have to recuse themselves because of conflicts of interest. And I would love if you could address how you're planning, wearing both of those hats, how you're planning to address those conflicts.
Certainly, so I could say, as an attorney, I'm additionally bound by ethical duties that I take very seriously. And I've been trained to recognize conflicts and seek the appropriate advice as to how to handle them. My law firm likewise has a conflict process that is regularly utilized. Quite frankly, my firm's practice, I'm not involved in real estate and these issues. I'm a labor employment lawyer. We have a small practice in Providence, and should an incident or issue arise that might necessarily involve me, I would obviously seek out the appropriate steps to take, and if I felt that I was necessary to recuse myself, I would have no issue doing that, certainly. With respect to my family member being on council, again, I have my own professional reputation that I've developed over now 8 years of being an attorney. I take that, I'm very proud of that. I'm my own person, I take my duties really very seriously. So I would seek out the appropriate advice as necessary should that occur.
From the conflict of interest board?
Certainly.
I think I made that point, but there's like a.
Yes, I can follow up on that.
Yeah,
after.
you can follow
Okay.
up.
Go ahead.
Counselor Sanchez.
I think Counselor,
No, I'm saying-
do you have more questions?
I do, but go ahead, because if you're continuing with this. mine are
So my
different.
question is completely on another.
Okay,
So
oh.
go continue.
Go ahead, Counselor Engelbach.
Awesome. So my other ones are around, we heard from Mr. Mitchell a little bit about his focus on, or how he's seen like housing issues come up and things like that. I would love this kind of 2-parter for you to address some of the issues you think you'll address on the zoning board, and then also particularly some of the things Councilman or Councilor Sanchez raised earlier, especially with your experience with RIDOT, what your thoughts are on things like parking minimums and maximums, investing in bike and active mobility and things like that.
Well, right off the bat, I can speak to parking minimums. I can say that I think that it is something that needs to be reassessed and contextualized given the state of affairs in Providence, the housing crisis, as Mr. Mitchell addressed. The city needs to be building real places that humans can live in, and parking minimums are a law that was based on a different time. Again, that would not be necessarily my responsibility as a zoning board member. My job would be to administer the zoning law as written. But again, I understand that the city plan is being revised, and a key role that the zoning board plays is essentially serving as the middle release valve between the existing state of the zoning law and the goal for where the city should go. So I think you would take care to pay attention to the city plans, the revised city plan, and address that. The housing crisis is real. It's seriously happening. We need to be able to build houses in Providence. I think Mr. Mitchell kind of discussed grant variances for accessory dwelling units. In-law apartments, I think might be a more common used term. I think those are really important. Obviously, you have to obey the law, but the zoning board has a certain authority to grant grants in those situations. So I'd be very sensitive to that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Chairwoman Helen.
We're still working something out.
Yeah. Still getting the hang of it.
Still getting the hang of it.
No, I mean, I just want to be honest. I share the similar questions as Sue, Counselor Annaboy, in terms of the potential conflict of interest. I will say it seems like your resume definitely is very qualified to be on the zoning board, so I do want to mention that. And then just as a side comment, being a family member of a local elected official, I'm starting to see how much wear and tear, for lack of better terms, that sometimes take on families. So I just want to thank you for doing that and being part of the process, because we're all here, but our family members are just as involved in public service. So I do want to quickly comment on that. And then I just had a specific question on your resume in terms of when you worked as an extern for the city of Providence, you worked on a constitutional challenge to a major urban redevelopment project. Can you just explain what that project was?
So this was a while ago, so I don't remember the exact details, but one of the projects that I did was I assisted with writing a summary judgment motion on behalf of the city. I assisted solicitor Lisa Dinnerman, who was doing the land use program for the city at the time. It was a constitutional claim. It was a taking. A real estate company had owned some property, I want to say down on Allen's Ave, that the Providence Redevelopment Authority had. They had labeled it as blighted, which I think gave them certain statutory powers. And the legal argument was that it's not a regulatory taking if you do it via your administrative authority to label something as blighted. So it was a legal argument that the real estate company, the property owner there, didn't have the right to make profits by the land from them, essentially. If I recall correctly, that's what I worked on. So that was one of my first things as a lawyer that I ever did.
Thank you.
Okay, and Pro Tem Chardo.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Chair. I too want to commend you and your family, because living here long enough that you certainly feel proud that we're not losing our young people to other states, as I used to hear here in my past duties. And so thank you for stepping up and also building up your resume, and it's admirable because your dad and your mom. You certainly have tremendous insight of city government. My question is around, as you mentioned, the zoning laws, right? That your role as a board member, it would be to interpret what the zoning laws is there. At times, certain things are not there. One is, how would you interact with, or your thoughts on interacting with, trying to improve some of the processes with the administration, also with the city council? And then two, when it comes to the sensitivity of the people's voice, sometimes when things are being proposed, even though they're on the books and they meet all the criteria, that at times even developers and neighborhoods, whether i.e. in downtown or just different wards, your thoughts in terms of the engagement and that respect that neighborhoods and people deserve. How would you voice your opinion on that and work around those issues as they come?
Certainly. I think with respect to your second question, I think that the community voice is essentially why the zoning board exists. I think that if it were just people administering the dry cobweb code of the zoning laws, we wouldn't have a need for variances. I think that's kind of calculated and built right into the way that it's supposed to be. So I think we have to listen to the community. We have to take what they say very seriously, because they are the people that live in those places. We can't just mortgage their future for whatever vision some technocrat thought in an office somewhere. So I think it's really important, and we do have to pay really close attention and take community very seriously. I think with respect to your first question about improvement, I don't have an answer at this time for I suppose lack of experience on the processes with the zoning board at this point in time. But I hope to be able to I hope to be able to have an answer for you on that soon.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Any more questions from committee members? I would just like to say you have a very impressive resume. Congratulations. This is, your experience is really deep in Providence, in the state of Rhode Island, and thank you for applying for this position. I do, I realize that we have standards as attorneys that we have to abide by in terms of ethics. I have every confidence that you will abide by, recuse yourself when necessary. I am going to ask, given the fact that you do have a mother on the council and also you work with Adler, Pollock, and Sheehan, I will ask you, if appointed, whether you would be willing to meet with our municipal integrity officer and legal counsel for the zoning board, just to review the city of Providence ethics code specifically with regard to expert communications.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
I really appreciate that, because I think that would just be, very productive. And I'm sorry I didn't ask Mr. Holt to do the same thing when he was before us, but I think he'll also be asked the same, as he has some experience with some, attorneys who have done a lot of work before our cities and boards. So I really appreciate your willingness to do that. And with that,
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Brendan F. Ryan to the zoning board of review.
Second?
Okay, motion was made by Councilor Taylor, second by Councilor Sparta. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please read agenda item number 4?
Number 5.
Sorry, 5, 4.
Item number 5, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 12, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1102 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31st, passed in 1987, he is this day reappointing Vivian B. Conley, Squire of 82 Dexter Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02909, as a member of the Board of License for a term to expire on January 17, 2026, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Conway.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and title for the record.
Dylan Conley, Chairman of the Providence Board of Licenses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Conway, if you'll just give us 1 minute to mark our exhibits. So we have a few letters. First of all, we have a letter from Anthony Centuri in support of Mr. Conley as chairperson of the Board of Licenses. I'd like to mark that as exhibit 1. I have a motion.
Do we have them? I don't see them.
Uh-oh. We have, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I read them all.
I'm so
Yeah, I read
sorry. Can we
them.
distribute
Oh.
both the letters in support and the letters in opposition?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the thing, yeah.
Those are all.
Those are positions.
So I am looking for a motion to mark the letter
So,
of
I make the
support.
motion, yeah, exhibit 1 from.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion made by Councilor Ramichardt, second by Pro Tem Charter. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and then, I'd like to make, we have 5 letters in opposition. I'd like to mark them separately. Okay, even though they're stapled together. So the first one is a very complete letter from John Heaney. I'd like to mark that as exhibit 2. May I have a motion?
So, second.
Okay. Motion made by Pro Tem Charter, second by Councilor Taylor, all in favor? All opposed? I'd like to mark as exhibit number 3, the email from Karen Polinsky, proposing the appointment of Dylan Conley. I'd like to mark that as exhibit 3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by President Charter, second by Councilor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And then as exhibit 4, the letter from Linda Perry from the Washington Park Association in opposition to the appointment.
So moved.
Okay. Motion made by Protem, second by Taylor. All in favor? All opposed? And then for number 4, exhibit number 4, we have a letter from Alfred. Five, we have a letter from Alfred Jeffries in opposition to the appointment of Dylan Conley. May I have that, may I have a motion? Okay. Motion made by Protem Charter. Second by Councilor Vanderbach. All in favor? We have number 6. We have exhibit number 6 from Alexander Carter in opposition. We have a motion. Motion made by Pro Tem Charter, second by Councilor Taylor. And finally, I think we have exhibit number 7. A letter from Douglas Victor in opposition. I have a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Motion made by Pro Tem, second by Councilor Taylor. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so we have all of our exhibits marked. Thank you very much. And so, Mr. Conley,
Madam Chair,
welcome.
thank you.
All right, would you give us a little, if you could just give us a little about your background and your experience as chairman of the licensing board?
I'd love to, and I actually have copies of my prepared remarks for the board.
I think we'll just hold those, and I'd like you to just, if you wouldn't mind, I don't know that we need it, if you're gonna give it to us verbally.
That's fine.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
There is some data in the back, but I can just reference it generally.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good evening. I'm here today because I have the distinct privilege of being nominated by the mayor of the city of Providence for a 3rd consecutive term as a member of the Providence Board of Licenses. As you well know, the position of the chair of the Board of Licenses is one of the most challenging and controversial positions in the city. And the office inherently attracts strong opinions. That is why I'm so honored to receive this nomination. This nomination comes from the 2nd mayoral administration to support me for this position. If I am fortunate, this will be my 3rd city council, and I believe my 5th city council administration that I've worked with. I believe every member of this committee is generally aware of my professional background as an attorney, but specifically I do want to highlight the fact that not only am I a lawyer, but I'm a lawyer that represents municipalities, and specifically I'm the licensing attorney for an additional 3 other communities. In that context, it's relevant to note that there were 2 separate third-party expert consultants hired to review and issue reports in regard to the operations of the Board of Licenses, and they recommended that an attorney become the chairperson of the board. For better or for worse, there are not many attorneys that practice municipal law, and even fewer of them regularly practice in the area of licensing, but I'm one of them, and I'm very happy to serve the community that I call home. Specific to my experience in the Board of Licenses, I was tasked with using my legal expertise to increase our ability to punish bad actors. Together with my excellent team of fellow board members, board counsel, the licensing department, the solicitor's office, and the police licensing unit, we've done exactly that. It's my understanding that under the current state regulatory regime, we have become the most capable board in the state in terms of permanently revoking licenses. In terms of issuing violations and getting proven and accepted onto the record that those violations stay attached to the license, we establish violations more frequently and more efficiently than we ever have in the past, and we do all this more capably and more expertly than any board in the state. How do I know this? The data. In 2022, we have initiated 127 notices of violations show cause procedures. About 25 of those are still pending. Of the remaining 100, we found sufficient evidence on approximately 90 incidents to bring charges. Of the 90 cases in which we have brought charges, we have a 100% success rate. We were not overturned a single time in 2022. I'm not sure that we were overturned in 2021. There's a little bit of debate. We weren't sure when the Fuego decision occurred. So it's either 2 or maybe at least 2 years since the last time we were overturned on the decision. My clients, the other municipalities that I work for, that do the licensing work, they look to Providence to see what to do when they have challenges. Municipalities and licensing board members from around the state have called me on background to try to learn how to do what we do here. So when you hear of incidents that happen in Warren or New Shoreham that are tragedies, you can be assured that they're actually calling us to try to figure out how to handle it. Licensing is a very tricky area of law, and it's inherently politically toxic. But when other communities experience challenges, they look to us for guidance. The manner in which we accumulate a disposition on the record through small violations and quickly as we possibly can is a critical component of not being overturned by the Department of Business Regulation, because the DVR prizes progressive discipline as grounds for revocation of a license. It is our purposeful strategy to accumulate violations with penalties that focus on abatement and opportunities to cure as means to do 2 things. First, primarily, to try to solve the issue at hand. And then second, if the issue is not solved, progressive discipline puts us in a position to expeditiously revoke a license without threat of being overturned. In that context of increased enforcement, I'm actually particularly proud to report that our management of operations, process, and procedure has also improved to the point that despite our dramatic increase in doling out violations and the fact that our revocations are no longer being routinely overturned by the DVR, the hospitality industry still gives our team excellent reviews. I think it's a relatively uncommon experience that you increase enforcement and penalties on a sector, and they actually enjoy the experience. That said, I'm aware of the increasing challenges in the city relative to noise. This largely stems from entertainment, but not exclusively. I would like to take a few moments to directly address the concern, as it appears to be the primary issue for the community at large, and it is the primary issue identified throughout the objections to my appointment this evening. The travel related to the recent increase in noise is a little bit complicated, but generally it is fair to summarize that the silence in the streets driven by the COVID shutdown, followed by the emergency rollout of COVID Take It Outside programs, which, believe it or not, those state Take It Outside programs created protections for outdoor expansions that lasted until at least this past April. And it's actually a matter of some debate what protections may still be in effect to some degree. But regardless, the flip from COVID silence to COVID Take It Outside caused a violent pendulum swing that greatly exacerbated previously existing noise and entertainment challenges. Systemically, entertainment in the city where commercial corridors abut and intertwine with residential zones is a daunting challenge. The answer is simple in concept, but time-consuming in execution: due process. The rule of law must control the management of noise, otherwise unjust decisions, where some locations are cracked down on, but other locations are not, would corrode the trust in the board, and quite frankly, we would simply be overturned and sued. It's critical to note that as a board, our duties are largely quasi-judicial, and they are not discretionary. In other words, state law and the city charter legally obligate the board to function more like a judge instead of like an elected official. The Board of Licenses is a separate quasi-judicial capacity which provides elected officials with a legal barrier from the pressures of community discontent, while the board uses due process such that a just outcome occurs instead of a politically expedient outcome depriving a business or property owner of their rights. That said, the council still controls local law, and to this end, I'm very hopeful. About 5 years ago, which I believe was, again, 2 city councils and 5 city council presidents ago, I worked quite hard with the previous administration over the course of months to develop an ordinance that would improve entertainment management and hopefully noise management as well. That ordinance unexpectedly died at the 11th hour after a public hearing process, but the focus this evening gives me hope that that issue may come back around. If I am able to resume my role on the Board of Licenses, one of my priorities would be to support this administration and to support this council and any of its efforts to develop policy, ordinances, or enforcement procedures designed to improve noise management. Members of this council administration have already spoken to me about their desire to address the issue. and I'll be happy to resume my work several years ago in whatever capacity the administration of this council sees fit. Again, based on the public discourse, I believe it's necessary for me to address the regulatory scheme around entertainment licenses and noise. To understand the challenge, the place to start is zoning and land rights because they are intractable. The first and most challenging rights are grandfathered rights, which effectively means that if someone has the right to have entertainment in a particular location, that location, not the licensee or the business, but the location itself has the right to have entertainment because entertainment has been found to be a zoning and land use right that travels with the land. Therefore, the location will always have the right to entertainment, no matter how many times the Board of Licenses removes it from a particular business. In other words, if the board simply denies a licensee an entertainment license because it is a bad location for that sort of use, we would either be reversed on appeal or someone else would be entitled to have entertainment in that location. Yet another way to think about it is this. Without an explicit law that manages entertainment and noise across the city in a manner that is enforceable, the board, because it is required to act as a judge, has no true enforcement ability to impose penalties on the use of illegal entitlement. This drives the additional challenge. Complaints are not evidence of violation. In practice, complaints trigger investigations. The evidence from the investigation controls the outcome of the quasi-judicial process, not the complaint. A neighbor complaint in and of itself is functionally hearsay and does not suffice to uphold a revocation or some sort of diminution of a property right or an entertainment license in that case. The second most challenging issue is that the Board of Licenses does not control which locations may be permitted for entertainment. We can manage entertainment through reasonable restrictions related to nuisances, but because of the current regulatory scheme, our entertainment revocations have been routinely overturned. Unlike liquor licenses, where we have begun to excel at upholding our penalties, entertainment does not get appealed to the Department of Business Regulations. It gets appealed directly to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. Our entertainment revocations have been overturned by the federal court and the Supreme Court on grounds related to the First and 14th Amendment because of challenges related to free speech and due process. We have been also overturned on a refusal to issue an entertainment license by the Superior Court on a theory of estoppel. This is actually a pretty odd, I see you nodding. This is a very odd case. But basically it was a ruling that even though this particular location never had the appropriate right to have entertainment in the first place, because they had been erroneously given entertainment so many times, they are allowed to have entertainment forever. That one was a pretty rough decision, I must be honest. One of the things that we actually were able to do, which greatly improved this as part of all of our procedures moving online, is there's a digital checklist that goes through zoning, and no license is issued until there's a zoning certificate check. We have caught many, many locations that have entertainment that actually don't have a right to it. And many times we've been able to correct it, not all. That's an example of which we were unable to correct it. The community response to the entertainment challenges is then, of course, to note that the problem is not necessarily the entertainment, but the noise. The noise ordinance is the third challenge. For reasons that I admittedly do not entirely understand, because I am not a sound engineer, the reliance on decibel readings for enforcement seems to fail because of inadequate equipment and expertise related to measuring sound and introducing those measurements as expert evidence. We have tried and failed on that front in the past, much to our chagrin. The hope related to the first three challenges is that they can be greatly improved through careful updates to the regulatory schemes related to entertainment and noise. I'd be very happy to assist the administration and the council in any means they deem fit in the development of any policy procedure to help ameliorate this problem. That said, the fourth challenge is capacity. As I understand it, the police licensing unit is generally a 3-person team for the week and often a 1-car patrol for the night. As police officers, they must prioritize safety over noise, so a single car cannot cover a whole city with divergent late-night corridors just for safety challenges alone and preventative measures, never mind the associated nuisances of late night, of nightlife. That said, I marvel what the licensing unit does, how much they cover and how responsive they are. Captain DeAndre and her team are excellent. their diligence, the means in which they respond. I think basically every license holder in the state has their direct contact information. People that have objections get their direct contact information very quickly. So we try to respond night of, because again, a complaint doesn't amount to evidence. We do need some sort of video footage or some sort of photo or some sort of recording in order to hold a violation hearing. The last capacity challenge is that the departmental licensing inspectors, which we have for about a year and a half now, for the first time in my tenure, we've been able to do great things with inspectors. We're not here to talk about mechanics, but I could talk about mechanics and car shops for an hour and a half. We've done great stuff with city inspectors on that front, but they only work during the day. So they don't really provide support specific to noise in the evening. A lot has happened during my time on the board. We adopted new policies and procedures. We began enforcing the new legal strategies, and we overcame our issue with the Department of Business Regulation. We dealt with COVID. That was not the most fun experience for that industry. Our application system went online. Our application reviews became digital and trackable. With new controls in place for day-to-day operations, our public meeting agendas have been reorganized and optimized. It's my opinion that the Board of Licenses is now in a position to support new preventative measures in a manner that would have been impossible just a couple years ago. So much of our bandwidth was dedicated to getting our house in order. I'm proud to report that the house is in order. It is in that light that I'm excited by the opportunity to be reappointed immediately following a sea change scale election, because myself and our team are ready and we're capable with whatever new vision and focus this council and administration may have. The remainder of the violation data, I can separate or just introduce that. That is the 127 notices of violation that have been presented that identifies dates of hearing and outcomes.
We can
Is
mark
this all-
that.
Oh, this is all one.
So this-
All along.
Okay, well, I would be happy to mark this as an exhibit, this would be exhibit number 8, license enforcement activity for 2022. We had a motion. Motion by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Pro Tem Pichardo. All in favor? All opposed? We'll mark this as an exhibit. Let me pass that around. And does everyone have a copy?
No. Oh, anyone?
A little bit inartful, but they're coming.
Okay. Does this complete your presentation?
It does, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. That was very thorough. Okay, questions. Oh, first of all, I would like to recognize Councilor Gonzalez for joining us this evening. Thank you very much. All right, do I have questions from our committee members? Who would like?
I just have a question for the chair.
Yes,
President.
yes.
If we can take his statement and also place it as part of the exhibit.
Well,
Let's
he's,
see what
he's,
thoroughly, more like on record.
It's all right.
it's on
Oh,
record.
okay, just that was,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Any, no worries. No worries. Can I have questions? Yes. Councilor Taylor.
Mine is not really questions. Mine is thank you. I've worked with Dylan this is my second term, but like 2-3, I was sitting in your spot 4 years ago and learning on the finance committee and other committees as well, trying to piece all this stuff together. And I will say that Dylan, because I didn't understand the ins and outs of the Board of Licensing, but he was a big help on several issues I had. One of them, the first one I had was a auto body place, you probably remember, that it was going to go out of business. But without his help, and actually John Murphy's help, the guy's still in business, paying his taxes and doing everything. But he didn't know the process as well as I didn't know the process. So we met with Dylan and his board, and he walked us through the process, which was kind of lengthy because we went back about 4 or 5 different times. But it was interesting for me to learn, but also the guy to learn that it's not all negative. Like he needed to do stuff that he wasn't doing, and he didn't realize it, and nobody told him. And when we met, we finally, and to this day, he's still in business. supporting his family and doing everything, which that probably wouldn't have happened if I didn't step in and try to help. And one thing I will mention, since it's 3 new council people here, you have to, as a council person, you have to step up into your, like I had Club Flow. So there was a shooting at Club Flow. So, again, I met with Dylan and the crew, and they said he's coming in, we talked and everything. I think there was a fine or something at that point in time. They closed the place and everything. But I actually went back to Club Flow myself with a lawyer who represents them, and said, listen, what do we need to do here? Because we can't keep having all shootings and everything. It's in my neighborhood, and So what happened was, COVID hit, which was real good because then they shut down for a while. But then now COVID part 2, they started coming, they got everything outside to do the outside stuff. So they were having a big party, having this band come in from Dominican Republic, everything. Again, I called Dylan and said, listen, I'm trying to be proactive here. This is not gonna go well this weekend because nobody's been out, everybody's coming out. And I think it was like a midnight on Saturday I was called because it was Sunday, it was the thing. But he was very helpful, along with the police licensing unit. Again, I went and talked to the guy, said, listen, I'm gonna be around. I'm gonna be, if I get any phone calls, the licensing unit's coming in. We got, I think, one licensing unit with, actually back then it was the harder man, showed up, they talked to the owner, and I had no problem the rest of the night. But if I didn't go by there and do that and let it go where it was, it would have ballooned up to, because there was a lot of people there. Some of the other things he helped was with La Braza Grill. They opened up on Elmwood Avenue. And all the neighbors were upset. That was part of my ward, but now it's actually Senator Pachado's.
yours.
No, it's not yours, it's yours, Ward 9. But there was a lot of issues that I went and talked to the guy, and Dylan gave me a bunch of things that the guy needed to do. And we sat and talked to the person, and to my knowledge, from this day, I don't think there's been an issue with that. Matter of fact, I had a fundraiser there. It was very quiet. It was not a lot of people, but he's had some outdoor events. I think it's been a good place. He's actually delivered food to the neighbors who can't afford the food and sent it around to really do. And the last thing I will say is, 2 things. Liquor licenses, he's helped me try to get people to, because people don't know how to do all this online stuff, especially if they're not from this country. So we've gotten a few liquor licenses through. And also the big thing is noise. I know people are all upset about the noise. And again, it comes down to you as council people need to go, because I had a place moved in and they put those huge boom boxes, and the whole back of that thing is loaded with speakers. And, of course, people call. They call the police, they call me. And we're over and said, listen, guys, you can't keep doing this because you gotta respect the neighborhood. Took a few times to go back there and do it. But also, everybody likes to blame the board of licenses for this. But the problem is that I'm hoping, I'm happy that Brett put him in again for this time and give him a fair shake, because I don't think, I'm very biased. The last administration I didn't get along with, and I don't think they stepped up to the plate on the noise, as well as they didn't step on the plate with the motorcycles and the ATVs. They didn't realize it was a problem until it was an over problem, you know what I mean? So I think the Board of Licenses has, I'm guessing, 2,500 licenses total in the city that they have to do. It's not just entertainment licenses, everything. But I hope that the police will work when we get a new police chief, new mayor. He comes back as as the chair, and give him a fair shake and see how we can address this. Because if the police aren't addressing, I drive down the road, I can hear the music blaring at this place. And I pull in and the policeman drives right by and I'm like, what's going on? And I don't think the police were, not defending all of them, but I don't think they were allowed to do their jobs. And I'm hoping that they're allowed to do their jobs now, and we see as the city, less loud music, less ATVs, motorcycles on the road. But I'm through talking now, but I just think Dylan does a great job for me, because I've gone to him as many times and tried to help, and he's helped me immensely as far as day, night, whatever. And I think we should entertain that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Questions?
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
Councilwoman Anderson.
you, Chair Anthony. And for that explanation, Councilman Taylor, that was really helpful. And Dylan, thank you so much for being here. And just hearing like the breadth of all of this, I'm like, oh my gosh. Dylan also has a full-time job. What is happening here? And just really appreciate you doing this and being here. And I know, speak to what Councilman Taylor just shared, he's someone that a number of my neighbors have recommended I talk to about a number of things. Housing, zoning, all sorts of questions. They're like, oh, why aren't you calling Dylan about it? So recognize expert among at least my neighbors. And so really appreciate you. I have a few quick questions. One is simple. Is this publicly available? I've noticed a few Ward 3 places on here, and I'd love to just like dig in.
Sure, yeah, that
Access.
we created for this meeting
Okay.
based on some of the feedback we got, so it's public now,
Okay.
but it
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
exist until like 4:30,
Oh, okay.
so,
If
yeah.
we had questions about any of these, it's okay to reach out to you in the
Please.
future? Okay.
We do it monthly so that I can track to make sure that there is no pending things that are kind of going on pending for too long.
Okay.
What used to happen in the past is we would issue a violation, and then the pre-hearing would take so long, the quality of the evidence starts to
Yeah.
erode. So one of the things you'll see in our new set of regulations is mandated time periods for the pre-hearing.
Okay.
So there's still 25 from this past month,
Mm-hmm.
but out of 125, we resolved 90 in less than 30 days.
Awesome. Let me interrupt for a minute,
Oh, please.
Councilor. Is this available online by any chance?
I doubt it.
Available to the public?
It certainly is as an exhibit to this public, but this is something we created for this meeting.
Okay,
What we do is I have, in addition to the public hearings, I regularly meet with basically the licensing team. This is one of our monthly tasks where we try to identify any issues with the show cause tracking. Show causes are normally scheduled for the earlier in the Thursday before our Thursday hearing. And if they don't get resolved at that Thursday, they get scheduled for the following Wednesday for a show cause hearing. But they almost all get solved at pre-hearing at this point because we don't really get reversed anymore. So there's not really a financial incentive to take a shot.
I'm only asking because I think this would be of interest to the public. I mean, if this could be made available, I know you have a lot on your plate, but
Sure.
I think that the public would be very interested in seeing the license of activity as often as you update it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Councilor.
no, thank you, Chairwoman. And agree, because I had no idea there was this much happening in even just the last bit of time, so this is really useful.
Last year, not 30 days. Apologize.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do the review monthly. That's not a month's
Yeah.
worth of work.
This would be crazy.
Yes.
You addressed this a bit in your opening remarks, but just to reiterate, so there, as you know, concerns have been raised about responsiveness from the Board of Licensing to community concerns, specifically related to some of the noise complaints that come up. So I would appreciate if you could address a little bit how you have been / will be responsive to community concerns, but also in the context of the role that the Board of Licensing plays, like what that process is and how it is or could be responsive to those.
Sure. So in practice, a standard violation is something that is basically witnessed by a police officer. And it goes from a police report into the solicitor's office. The solicitor's office, this is true not just of licensing, but if you just think about district court as well, there's prosecutorial discretion. The solicitor's office basically makes a determination if there's sufficient evidence to pursue a claim of a violation or a prosecution. Then the solicitor's office, if they believe there is such, they issue a notice of violation. The notice of violation triggers our pre-hearing schedule and conference, which is set out in our regulations. If it doesn't settle in pre-hearing, then it goes to a full show cause hearing. That is open to the public, but the public cannot comment. In the same way that the public cannot comment in a district court proceeding, because it's functionally a trial, you are only called to testify if you're going to swear to an oath. So either the city solicitor's office is going to call you as one of their witnesses in support of the prosecution, or the licensee is going to call you as a witness in support of the defense. What does happen with complaints is there's really two tiers of complaints. One tier of complaints is people just saying, there was a problem at such and such a place last night, or there was a problem at such and such a place normally on Thursdays at 11 o'clock. If that doesn't include actual hard evidence of the problem, we don't have anything sufficient to bring a claim. So what we do is we do a follow-up investigation. Follow-up investigations are sometimes successful and not always. Sometimes, if there's a repeat problem, you can see how a follow-up investigation can be successful. If it was a once-off issue, a follow-up investigation doesn't do anything. If there was a problem on Saturday the 10th, we go out on Saturday the 17th, there's nothing there. So that lack of evidence means there's no prosecution. Another thing that does happen, not all the time, but it does happen enough that it merits identifying, is we have people complaining about there's an issue. We keep sending people out, we keep sending the police out, the police keep coming back and telling us, we don't see anything, we don't hear anything. Every once in a rare while, there will be a report that there was a problem, and then when we go to see what happened, the licensee behaved in like a pretty admirable manner. So let's say a fight starts to break out and the licensee immediately calls the police. Security tries to intervene as quickly as possible. They're trying to manage the scene. A part of the prosecutorial discretion is whether or not a violation occurs or whether or not that it merits bringing the prosecution. If you think about it in the context of the long-term management, if we prosecute everyone for every single claim, every single time they call the police, no one's going to call the police. If we do want to get public safety interjected into a safety situation as fast as humanly possible. So that is something that I know that the police command staff and the solicitor's office work on. I think they both push back and forth on each other on when that call is made in the right way and in the wrong way. But that's not something that gets to the Board of Licenses until they get all the way through the pre-hearing process and out to a show cause. Our actions as board members don't start until they're unable to settle the dispute at any of the stops along the way. All of those stops are tracked, as you can see. And so it's similar to, but not identical to, when a new license submits. All these different departments check off. So let's say someone says there's an entertainment issue at this location, we would identify that as zoning, and zoning will let us know whether or not they can have entertainment there, and so on and so forth. There's a common first tier of issues where a complaint comes in and the licensee doesn't really realize that they weren't allowed to do that, and so they're kind of given their warning, but you don't get to do ignorance twice. We come down very hard if they have a repeat incident.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Can I ask just one more question, or are you gonna?
Can I ask just a follow-up question, excuse me? So with regard to noise complaints, you notice a violation, so I'd just like to drill down on that. How does that work? So somebody's, filing a complaint about noise, so how does that come to the board, and how do you deal with that specifically, the noise complaint?
Sure, the noise complaints essentially need to be witnessed by an officer. And there are two tiers of noise complaints. It's whether or not you have a license. If you don't have a license, any noise that can be heard outside the four walls is a violation. That's a really, really easy violation to enforce, because the officer just states in the record, I can hear it outside the four walls, or you can go to a body cam, or someone can submit video footage from across the street. I can hear it. Well, that's done. When they have an entertainment license, that is a murky nightmare. I think I might want to just leave it at that. It's a murky nightmare. What exactly constitutes a noise ordinance violation when there is an entertainment license in place is not something we have good case law on. It's not something we have good statutory control
And why is it different? Why is it different whether they hold an entertainment license or not?
It has to do with how the state law definition of entertainment works. It has to do with how the definition of what a permit is and the rights that a permit grants upon the issuance of an entertainment permit. It's related to their rights as landowners with entertainment for zoning or grandfathered rights for zoning. In each of those cases, it's all subject to both First Amendment claims and due process claims, and in a totally bizarre case, an estoppel claim, which I can't believe that is a court decision. But there should be no estoppel against the sovereign, but it happened.
So just to follow up on the issues that may have occurred over COVID.
Yes.
And that have given rise to some very detailed letters of opposition. So, when the entertainment spilled out into the streets and caused some noise issues, and how did you handle that?
So we would bring people in and basically bring them in routinely, try to put in different restrictions, changes, different tweaks on how they were operating. But it's essentially during the take it outside protections, it's essentially the board begging the licensee to do things the board doesn't have the ability to make the licensee do. That's a specific time period which arguably ended this April. There's this argument about that. The state law basically said that any of the expansions were protected. And they kept on tolling the time period for that. The most recent tolling period expired in April. As it stands, we haven't had to deal with anything related to that in some time. It's cold weather. We didn't have a challenge related to it after that, but that was a big issue for us. In a normal circumstance, these expansions were really highly regulated and they were seasonal. To take it outside was, it was a free-for-all. It was basically, did DPW or fire have a threat to personal safety level concern? If not, it was permitted. That would have been in April, May, I don't know, maybe June, I forget how the rollout in COVID worked, of 2020.
Yeah.
And then all of those things were grandfathered by state law for each time period thereafter. So basically, people spilled out into the streets and under the circumstances that it was an emergency to do so, to try to maintain business, to try to maintain some semblance of public health. But then as the public health threat diminished, the protections remained.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was my next
Councilor
question,
Ann.
that was so great,
I'm so
thank
sorry.
you. No, that was actually my exact next question, so glad you asked that. And then my only other question was, since we talked about take it outside, is you had mentioned in your testimony an ordinance that you had worked on with the last council. Is that something you can share with the new council members who maybe haven't seen that?
So I assume it's a portion of the record.
Okay.
It was a part of a very large package, so I don't know if it's easy to isolate. Off the top of my head, I believe a lot of it was management based on time of day and location.
Okay.
But there was months of iterations that led up to the introduction, and with legislation, I kind of would forget which one was the last one.
That's fair.
Do I have any other committee members that have questions? Councilor Sanchez.
Chairwoman, excuse me, first of all, Dylan, I just want to thank you for stepping back up. It's a very difficult job, as you can see. There's a lot of moving parts. It seems like you really sometimes are tied, your hands are tied. You gotta follow state law. And I just want to make a comment. I think in terms of nightlife, I think something that hasn't really been there is identity as a city. Like, what exactly do we want to do? So maybe for the staffs of the administrations that are present, I think that's something maybe the council and that administration can try to work on, is what exactly do we want to do with nightlife, and where do we want to have these types of establishments? We really need some sort of identity to kind of move the direction of the city on a more coordinated path. So that's just a quick comment that I want to make. And then in terms of responsive, something I've heard of community members, fellow councilors, is that you're always very responsive, and that's not always common in government, so especially local government. So we do want to appreciate that for sure. The only question I have, and something that I was very firm on when I was running with my neighbors, is just transparency, being honest with folks. And I know you're very busy, it seems like, with different clients and whatnot. So I just want to ask you in the most genuine way, how many clients do you currently have with City Matters, and like how do you separate that from your chair, your position as chair of the licensing board. Does that ever conflict? And if there is opportunity, like, how do you determine to either not take that client or what's the best way to move forward?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. A lot of my practice within the city is related to land use. There are circumstances in which there's been a property owner that wants to do something with the building, and there's a restaurant or some sort of licensed facility associated with it, and I refer that out. There are other circumstances in which a client that I'm doing land use work for some other matter, has come in front of the board, and in that scenario, I fill out the recusal form. It states exactly what the conflict is. That gets submitted both to the city and to the State Ethics Commission. My brother, Council Ryan, identified it as well. As one of the things and obligations that we have as attorneys is we have an additional tier of conflict that we need to pay attention to. I think an ethics violation in and of itself is sort of a moral mark, but in addition, it's a professional risk for me. I risk my license if I don't abide by those sorts of conflicts. So I take that very seriously, and I'm very thankful that Attorney Louis Simone, who's board counsel, has a similar law practice to mine, and that he represents a lot of different private clients and municipalities, because there's a lot of overlap between, it's the same law if you're representing a client or if you're representing a government body. And so he and I talk and we pick each other's brain about when there would be a conflict. And my general rule of thumb is that if it comes anywhere close to a conflict, I recuse. It's just, there's no reason to participate in a hearing in which someone might argue that there is a conflict.
Thank you.
Other committee members? Yes, Pro Tem
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chardo.
Thank you. Just for, again, as Councilman Taylor was indicating a little bit of history, I had the pleasure and honor to serve with Chairman Conley. I was also a member on the Board of Licensing, and then as chair, as it was evolving and also improving it. This has served as a report to the finance, which is great, because I remember as we were transitioning from paper to electronic and so forth, and it's been trying, and you're right on the money. This process is very detailed, so I commend you for really, in the leadership that you provided, that I've heard over time during COVID, because that was the most challenging time. So appreciate the service. Appreciate the leadership of the people that are willing to serve, and the pressure. I mean, as it was indicated earlier, it is one of the most challenging. Whoever steps into that leadership role as chair will always get the brunt of the community aspect, the business, and politically also. So knowing that, I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask, and I'll start with. The take it outside, has it expired, or including, obviously, just for the record, including the governor's executive order and so forth under COVID? Can you just expand on that? If it's clear, then we'll move on to the next question.
I believe so. There's some argument that there are some provisions that have been continued and told. I think for our purposes, our ability to manage the location and time of the expansions is no longer controlled by state protections. That's a position that we've been working with both Lou and Mario. I believe we're in a position that we can enforce in a way that we were literally prohibited from being able to enforce from this previous April going back.
Thank you for that. And I think that we, and the public needs to be aware of that, and particularly for us as city council people, because we do get the pressures from our constituents, right? And when we have main streets and restaurants, and we may have lounges and so forth, that now have been expanded, but also so that way we can provide information to that business constituency, such as also the residents. The other is in terms of the time commitment that the board takes at hand. You're still meeting twice a week?
So a minimum of twice a week. with emergency show causes on weekends. You know that pattern, not all the time, but you have your hot spots. And then I meet or work some, informally, but over the course of the week, I stay in touch with the department staff fairly regularly on different issues like violations, or in the past, we did a ton of work with policy development, and a lot of those things are kind of checked off, and we're looking forward to playing a supportive role to the council and the mayoral administration on whatever your vision is.
Right. Thank you, and thank you for offering that. The third thing is in reference to the staffing capacity. Under the board's purview, you only have, obviously, you oversee all those licenses, but what keeps you the busiest is entertainment and liquor license.
Yes.
And so currently, you indicated you just have one police officer right?
It's a three-person team, generally one car per night. So it'll be either a solo officer in a car or two officers in a car. That's how I generally understand the practice, and that's the evening coverage. They are responsive to district commanders, and district commanders do know to call them, but it's a big city for one car.
Right. And that hasn't changed, because that has been
The same as.
pretty much the same, this is what, and also the same thing with the inspectors during the day. There's only two?
There's two.
Yeah.
They're only during the day. What we've done is we focused them on sort of the parking issues and noise issues associated with mechanic shops. There's also, and this is kind of an awesome tradition, I wish my office had it. Mechanic shops tend to turn into these little mini parties in the day at the end of the workday. And sounds like a lot of fun, but not great for neighbors. So they do help with that as well. So that's like a little bit beyond the 5 o'clock. So I can't say they're a hard stop at 5, but they are helpful.
I think the councilman, Taylor, might be getting close to it. Madam Chair. The other is in reference to underage drinking. Has there been any uptick on that? Because I know we tackled it very early years, especially post-COVID. And how have you seen any trend in terms of whether there's an uptick with fake IDs and so forth? And what are you as chairman or the board planning to do, if you have any thoughts on that?
So the two particular incidents come to mind. One was a recent incident at a relatively large club, and they received a litany of abatements as a result of their show cause process. And one of them was an explicit statement that if there is continued underage drinking violations, we're going to restrict the age limit for entry, which is not something we do, normally do. So if they can't control the people that are coming in, we will control the people that are coming in for them. The other issue that we've seen, which is a bit wild, is the fake IDs now beat the scanners.
Oh.
So it's a big problem for Class A liquor stores. There was one liquor store in particular, it's a location immediately adjacent to a college, that went through 3 different owners in about a 1.5 year time period because they kept on getting hit with underage violations. And their solution is they just moved. They weren't willing to be located anywhere near the college anymore. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it is interesting.
Right. And that was an experience.
Yeah.
2 more.
Yes, please.
On the noise complaints, huge issue in the city. In fact, there's maybe a group here from the noise project or something like that. You don't get all the violations of the noise complaints, only coming from the entertainment. The police deals with pretty much and goes up to the judicial process, municipal. You only get the noise complaints from the clubs and restaurants? Or you deal with all of them?
All of them, if they get to us. So if it's related to a licensee, it's under our jurisdiction. If it's not related to a licensee, like it's just like a house or something like that, it goes to minimum housing in municipal court. When I say if it gets to us, one of the things, and I think it happened right before your tenure, there was a previous chairperson who was sued because of her participation in the investigation of a complaint. Because we sit in a quasi-judicial capacity, if we basically pursue a complaint as opposed to sitting back as judge, that's a conflict. So one of the challenges we have is at the end of the day, the buck stops with us, but it can't start with us too. Otherwise, it's a violation of the law. So people that want to come to us immediately actually can't, and they hurt their own cause when they do that.
And then lastly, in the discussion of the marijuana being legally, in some form or another, it's in backyard, hasn't come to Providence. Any thoughts on dispensary and ordinance and regulations? Most likely, unless the city council develop another entity to handle that enforcement or regulation. Any thoughts in terms of the dispensary facilities in the future in the city of Providence?
It's a great question. I like the licensing scheme. I like the fact that a business has a privilege, and then the use of that can be managed on a regular basis. As much as I am a land use attorney, doing those things based on zoning alone, zoning isn't a great way to enforce day-to-day operations problems. Licensing is a great way to enforce day-to-day operations problems. One of our challenges with entertainment is that it's this bizarre hybrid between licensing and land use. So I do think cannabis consumption could be managed through licensing, and I'd be excited to take something like that on.
I think that we have that responsibility to start forecasting on what it's in our backyard and we'll take upon within the leadership of the mayor's office and us to really start thinking about those things. And so then lastly is that, again, knowing that the board is a challenging one, you don't necessarily have to be an attorney, because that's not the way it's set up, because the city council has not set it up that way, or the charter, I believe. But it does help. The chairman always have, and each department have their own attorney to advise them, and Lou DeSimone is still correct. The
That's
attorney
correct.
has done a good job, and so I thank you for your presentation, and also just again reinforcing. I know that you've been reaching out to business and talking to people. I think a component that I saw that what I tried to do was bridge this business and community. The community needs more information and awareness so they can understand how complex government is, but particularly when it comes to being in their own backyard. It's a challenge, and I think that hopefully you and us can, in the mayor's office, can really tackle that issue in terms of providing information and helping our constituents become more aware of how it works. So thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. Councilman Gonzalez, thank you for your lead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just want to thank you for your incredible service. You were incredibly responsive. There have been numerous incidents, and I can piggyback on our majority leader here, where I've had to reach out about various businesses in Ward 1, and it's particularly challenging here because we've got an overdose hotspot specifically in Ward 1 with overdoses, but you've been incredibly helpful. And I want to echo also just everything that's been said, but in your letter of support, the fact that you're fair and impartial, and you're always willing to meet and listen and explore new ideas to grow safety and prosperity for the nighttime industry and economy here. I'm curious also about what should this body, and I understand if there might be things that might feel uncomfortable for you to say as the chair of the licensing board, and feel free to share that, and I know you will. What do you think we can do differently as a council to provide some real legislative teeth behind what we need to do differently?
it's a great question. I don't envy your position because this is an issue that is sort of like a third rail in local politics. It so closely hits quality of life issues, and yet we all appreciate that these local small businesses are absolutely vital to the city. So when you lean into a matter that is going to impact the balance between residents and businesses on quality of life issues, no matter what you do, people are going to be upset. So to the extent that the council is willing to take a review of any issues that you see building up, I want to be there to be an asset, to describe, in practice, this is what is working for us, this isn't what is working for us. There's a lot of laws that look great on paper, and then, me and the licensing enforcement team and the solicitor look around at each other, scratching our heads, being like, I don't know how we're gonna pull that off. So, if we could have that dialogue in advance of sort of the intense focus that would be on any legislation that touches these issues, I think that would be great. In particular, I would refer to Mario Martone, Alyssa DeAndre, Captain DeAndre, and Ludi Simone as assets. And in terms of day-to-day operations, both Stephanie Lopes and Jose Juicy are fantastic. They're always very responsive to me. So I think if we can make ourselves available, my recommendation is that to take advantage of us.
Yeah, is there any way that we can hone on sort of specifics there? Because, you mentioned the fact that we need to have more capacity in terms of being a little bit more proactive, specifically with the licensing department. Have you seen anything in other municipalities that you've saw in local law that you've said, wow, that's something that could be applied to our municipality and help us address some of these basic quality of life issues that we're experiencing?
So in one of the communities I work with, there's it's an extraordinarily wealthy fire district immediately adjacent to a hyper luxury resort. So the sound issues there resulted in a whole host of people being trained on how to use decibel readers.
Well, I was going to mention that because that would be great. I mean, having additional decibel readers citywide where we equip police officers with those decibel readers, but also there's more proactive enforcement of that as opposed to what we're doing now, which is largely reactive. It would be great for us to go out and have folks, on a nightly basis roam the city and make sure that what folks who, should be operating legally and with their entertainment licenses in the way that they operate should be within accordance to our local laws. It relates to our what's allowed via the decibel level.
Agreed. We have had issues in the past where I watched the video footage and it's clear to me that any person with any semblance of logic would say that is a noise violation. And then the decibel sound expert go on the record and say, I did all the recordings, this is what the recordings were, this is what the standard is, it's not a violation of the recording. And now the only evidence I have on the record is video footage that to me looks utterly insane, but is meaningless because it doesn't include any decibel information. And a sound engineer saying there's no violation.
And as an attorney, would you, and you can totally not answer this question if you don't feel comfortable answering this question, do you think that should be something that would be codified into local law, or should that be an administrative policy? Because there are sort of two tacks here. If we mandate it via the ordinance, that's one way of addressing some of these basic quality of life issues. If we use an administrative function where, the city administration has a policy, and perhaps through the finance committee, we find additional funding to address that the capacity issue. What route would you take there?
I'm comfortable either way as long as the law on the books is clear for the purposes of enforcement. I don't know off the top of my head whether or not the current sound ordinance has any enforcement issues, whether or not we could do a regulation underneath that sound ordinance, because we can be more restrictive and not less, is your general rule of thumb there. So that can be a little bit complicated, but I'd be happy to point out that question to both Lou and Mario and get a more definitive answer for you.
Mr. Chairwoman, that's all I have. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do for the city.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions, maybe? Councilor Taylor?
No, I do not.
All right. Mr. Conley, I've got a few myself. So I'm a little concerned about the blurring of the lines. I mean, I think you're an excellent attorney and you do a very good job as chairman of the board of licenses. I just worry that maybe, I think you have very, very clear directive in terms of what you're supposed to be doing as the chairman of the board of licenses and what the board of licenses is supposed to do. I sometimes worry that there's a blurring of the lines, meaning that maybe you're trying to do policy work rather than the work of the board. So I'm just wanting a little clarification on how, we do have a new mayor. I'm sure I hope that he's gonna be more involved in these, but will you be taking your direction from the mayor in terms of policy?
In terms of policy, I'll be taking my direction from the mayor and the council. I don't draft policy, I facilitate. I'm a resource to the mayor and the council. The extent of our policy work was the rewriting of our own regulations. I would say about 95% of that was an area that was a reorganization of existing law. The remaining 5% of it was done over the course of about a 2 or 3 year period with the administration, meeting through the administration.
Great. And then the other line is just in terms of, the business dealings you have with the city. So you do a lot of work for our city council, before our CPC, and think zoning board also. And so I think it's really, really important to maintain a really sharp line between your business, and I know you are ethically obligated as an attorney to do so. You've talked about your recusal practice and how you don't take clients that are going to have any kind of conflict. But I just, I'm going to say that, I'm sure through the relationships you've built with the council people that that happened in the prior council and are continuing on, also the relationships you'll be building with your new council members, that there is some sort of line there in terms of, I don't think it's conscious, but maybe unconscious that, you're helping people with their problems, but also you were representing their businesses before these boards and council people. So I'm just going to say I really like to just go on record and say that. I've been a little concerned. I do want to know whether you've registered as a lobbyist with the city.
Within the city? No, there's a specific exemption for attorneys.
Okay, I think that's not true. If you wouldn't mind looking at that a little more closely, I would appreciate it, because I just want to be absolutely crystal clear. And also, just in terms of, your assurance that I'm a little concerned that there's been communications via text with council members during hearings or committee meetings. I'm just going to ask you to be very, very careful about any kind of ongoing relationships when you're representing a business before a council and a committee.
Okay.
So I hope that you'll really keep that in mind so that we'll have a really sharp line to keep it separate and allow you to do the best work for your clients and also the excellent work you're doing for the licensing board.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one. I know that every year you're supposed to do a report. Is that available online yet, or can you check on that? If, just submitting a report to the city council. Actually, I think it's the mayor and then the city council.
I'll check on that. I don't know what we've
I mean,
done.
this is like a report, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Disclosure, is that what you're referring to?
it's sort of like the annual report that
For the board. Yeah.
submit to the city council.
Yeah,
If that's their report.
I will double check on that.
Okay. Check with me.
It's a lot going on. I kind of forgot about that. I don't know what's
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion.
Make a motion, we reappoint Dylan D. Conley as a member of the Board of Licenses.
Second. Okay, we got the motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
We have the email. It's good. We have the,
It was emailed to you?
Yeah, it was emailed. Okay, Madam Chair, Clerk, would you please read the next item, agenda item?
Item number 6, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 13, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to Sections 302B and 1002 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31st, passed in 1987, he is this day appointing Patricia A. Coyne 5 of 36 Jeffrey Drive, North Situate, Rhode Island, 02857, to the position of Director of the Department of Public Works, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Good evening, thank you for coming.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Please state your full name and your position for the record.
My full name is Patricia Ann Coyne Day, and I'm the Director of the Public Works.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, we're very excited to have you. So if you wouldn't mind giving us just a little synopsis of your background, and we can go from there.
Certainly, thank you, Madam Chair, thank you, members of the committee. I'd also like to thank the mayor for his confidence in me, in appointing me to this position. I am a lifelong Rhode Islander. My father was born and raised in Providence. I spent quite a bit of time working in Providence, but I've spent the last almost 24 years working in Cranston, where I worked for the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. Step back a little bit, I went to St. Mary's Academy Bayview. I graduated from Rhode Island College with a degree in political science and a minor in philosophy, and also graduated from the New England School of Law. It's now called New England Law Boston. I don't know why they changed their name, but they did. But when I went there, it was at the New England School of Law. Started my legal career as a prosecutor with the Department of Attorney General. And after about 4 or 5 years there, went to the Department of Corrections to become staff attorney there. Rose through the ranks, if you will, to the position of chief legal counsel and then assistant director of administration at the Department of Corrections. And then for the last 5 years have served as the director of the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections, running the Department of Corrections is kind of like running a small city. There are upwards of 27 to 2,800 offenders in our custody incarcerated. There's over 20,000 people in Rhode Island under supervision of probation or parole that we're responsible for, that they're responsible for. That's going to be a tough habit to break. A budget of about $265 million, about 1,300 to 1,400 employees, 800 plus of whom are uniformed correctional staff. It was my honor to lead that agency through day-to-day operations, which were never boring, as well as any number of crises, hurricanes, blizzards, and certainly not the least of which a worldwide pandemic. The Rhode Island Department of Corrections had one of the lowest death rates from COVID among inmates in its custody at 2. And unfortunately also 2 staff members, as well as one of the highest vaccination rates among inmates and staff in the country on corrections departments. So I'm very proud of that record. After almost 24 years in criminal justice, I was looking for a change. It's a very challenging profession. It's a very honorable profession. I work with absolutely top-notch men and women in that department, and I'm very proud of that. But I was looking for something a little different.
You found it.
I found it. And I'm really just beyond grateful that Mayor Smiley has given me his confidence in asking me to take on this position. It is, I know on paper it looks weird, coming from pretty much a lifetime of criminal justice to DPW, but it's a team.
And I love leading teams, I love building teams, I love working with people and finding out what they do every day and how they do it and how we can do it better, and how I can help with that. So that's something that's very, very exciting to me. And it almost doesn't matter what the subject matter is, but for me, it's always been about public service. I've never been frankly interested in private practice. I've always worked in public service. My husband is a retired police officer. My son is a criminal prosecutor at the AG's office. My daughter works at a college in Connecticut. And so we kind of just have always had that, which I credit to my father as example of it was always about public service. And so it might seem unusual, but for me, I'm excited to be able to contribute to people's quality of life, things that are important to them, things that they almost shouldn't have to think about, like trash pickup and snow plowing, and it's the kind of thing you notice when it's not done well, and hopefully you don't think about when it is done well. And so I'd like to be at the fore of improving those kinds of quality of life issues for the people of Providence.
Wonderful. You even answered my second question, which is why are you doing
What?
And I also went to New England School of Law, so yes.
Woo, I did these.
Anyway, committee members. Questions?
She answered. So like, we all think.
I know, I'm sorry. Councilman Taylor.
So my question is that this is my second term sitting on the finance committee. And obviously it's a different administration. But what I see is when, this is no blame to you or anything, I'm just telling you how I see it. When it comes budget season, that the director heads come, and I'm laying my cards on the table. I should actually mention this to John too, but it just came to my mind. I know, because I'm a retired fireman in the city, so I've been in the city for 34 years. So I know fire, police, DPW pretty well. And I know there are like shortages. And the problem that I see that happens is when a director head comes in, because they work for the mayor, and I understand that. Because I was not union as well when I retired. But they come in and we ask them, hey, what do you need? What do you need to make your department up to par to the 9 times out of 10 that I've seen in the last few directors that we've had, before you, they weren't honest. They were like, no, we're all set, we can do whatever we deal with. That makes me upset because I know they need more, I know they need more cement finishes, I know they need more laborers, because we're always, calling as council people saying, hey, can we get this trash picked up, can we do, geez, there's not enough guys today, maybe tomorrow, but, So I guess, more of a statement than anything, that I know Mayor Smiley made you, but I just hope that you would be honest from when Sal and then Dave Ambro and the different people that work there tell you, hey, we need this, that you would bring that to us, because that's what we're here for. We're here to try to make everything run well, and without the proper equipment, manpower, that it's just not gonna work. And it's been 4 years that I've seen this. Like I said, I don't blame the directors because they work for the mayor, and the mayor can say, hey, listen, if you had 140,000 or whatever, 1.1 million last year, don't go over that. If I try to cut 20%. I just hope that you're that person that can change and say, hey, we need, without worrying about what the mayor made, Hope that makes sense.
But it does, everyone has a boss.
Right.
And the mayor's my boss. I have a lot of respect for him, but I also know that these issues are very high on his priority list, in terms of improving those kinds of services. And I think even the most perfect system, if you will, has room for improvement. What I've seen, and this is day 6 for me, what I've seen so far is a department I've spent time in every division. I spent time Sunday in the rain with the sewer guys, learning about storm drains and how those work and what they look like. I love doing things like that. I like to be boots on the ground. I don't want to do their job.
Right.
I can't do their job. They're the experts, but I want to be able to advocate for staff, and I can't do that if I don't understand what they do every day. It's what I did at the
You can do this job. I pick up mattresses every Saturday.
You'll be there Saturday about the mattress detail, but what I have seen, even in just my first 6 days, are definite areas of need. And I think it's only fair, and this is something that frankly, I will say to my boss, that I think it's only fair that if you're setting high expectations for any department, you have to give the respect of giving the tools to the people to do the job. I can't ask you to build me a house if I don't give you the tools to build the house. And so I'm spending these, I've spent the last 6 days, actually even a little bit before that, listening to staff, finding out what their needs and wants are, and making sure that I understand what the difference is there. But also, finding out how can we do this better, and don't tell me you can't do it, tell me what you need to do it, and I will advocate for that. And I'm sure, I understand the budget process, I went through it many times on the state level, and you can't always get what you want.
Right.
But if you try, sometimes you get what you need. Thank you to the Rolling Stones. And so that's kind of like that's my point of view. That's going to be my point of view in the budget process, and that'll be my point of view in leading that department.
And also, just one last thing, since John is here for public property, I know that we pushed to get the building knocked down. I'm hoping that John, the public property, the city council, and yourself can work to get that building back up sooner than later, so they have a proper place to work out.
Which building?
The public works building that they knocked down. So just, I think that would bring morale, everything up, to have a nice building. And I see how things take forever, but if there's anything that we can do, especially with opera money and stuff that's out there. So let's use it to our advantage and work on with public property to get that going instead of, the building's on the way, the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the position of DPW. When I was looking at and heard the news about you coming in, you've done a great job at the correction officer, as you may know. Served in that area, in the legislative part of the government, and so I know of your work. And so, looking forward to your leadership. Looking forward to is the reason why I commend the mayor for putting a good team and addressing the areas of great need. I want to put this city councilman weekend lay him off so that way. He no longer has to pick up a lot of mattresses. And piggyback on that is that I recognize that there hasn't been enough personnel to do the work. I've heard it from my constituents, I've heard it from city council, and even when I was in office. So I hope that in your budget, you shoot for the moon, as we say, and then let's see. And you've heard it already from a majority leader. We'll figure out how to address my chairman. But I could only speak for my constituents in that area where over the years we felt, the quality of life issues pertains to, it's about the dumping that takes place, the pickup of mattresses and graffiti, in addition to a good and effective recycling program where people are actually, it seems like every other year we're actually reinventing the wheel or coming up with a new program. People don't know what's what now. And so looking for that direction. And then, so my question to you is as you see the day 6 on the job, and this is my 3rd week, in terms of what's your vision in terms of DPW having the responsibility now to shepherd also a new building that has to also work with the larger vision of DPW, the public building authority and so forth. What's your vision for the department, and then how can we also help to make that happen?
So I think my vision is certainly to spend at least a couple more days evaluating and really learning about the work that is already happening. And like I said, I've already met everyone on staff and I take that back, second and third shift highway, I'm meeting them at the end of this week. But I've met, to a person, people who are very enthusiastic about their mission and their role and their expertise, and so I'm excited about that. What I see, what my vision per se for the DPW is how can we keep what we do well, improve on what we're not doing so well, and what do we need to get there? And so I do think that there has been some, neglect is the wrong word because it sounds bad, but some kind of failure to really provide as many resources as we would need to provide the services that we all deserve. And so that's kind of my vision. I want to be able to look at things like technology. How can we use technology to not only improve the services we provide, but improve the transparency that we have? I'm a huge believer in transparency and accessibility. I mean, we are, at the end of the day, a public agency. We serve the public. We are public servants, and I'm a big believer in that. Part of what I really want to try to do is to help break down silos that might exist between the divisions within DPW as well as outside DPW, working with other agencies. I'm thrilled that one of the first people I met coming aboard was John, and John and I go way back now. Best friends for like 2 weeks. But I mean, even before I came on board, John very willingly came out and toured the 700 Allen's building with me and heard my concerns, and we're already working together on that. And I think just, instilling a reminder that we all work for the city. I might work for DPW, you might work for property, somebody else might work for something else. And within DPW, there's, highway, engineering, environmental, and so forth, but we should all be rowing this boat in the same direction. And so that's kind of my vision, to make sure that the team is as strong as it can be and has the resources it needs to provide the services that should be expected.
Thank you very much, and welcome.
Okay. Counselor.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman, and thank you so much. I'm so excited. I was excited to see your resume, and even more excited now that I've heard you speak. And I've chatted actually with a few DPW staff over the last few days who've all been saying how great it has been to work with you so far. So that's just so you know that. And I was going to ask about how you plan to work with other agencies within, and so just wanted to be grateful that that is just how you described it. I know what I've heard from my neighbors so far, and I'm more of like a holistic systems thinker, for our residents, they are interacting with the city of Providence. They're not interacting with DPW and parks and blah, 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 blah. You shouldn't need a PhD in government to understand how to get your tree removed and also your sidewalk replaced. That feels like one thing to most people, and it should be. And so I was gonna ask about that, but you already addressed it by saying that. And so it's really refreshing. I'm glad to hear that you have that kind of, you work for the city is one entity, it's not 100 different entities that people should have to navigate. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Well, I'm happy to still see you, Patricia. I actually had the pleasure of meeting with Patricia on her first day. I didn't know it was going to be her first day. I would have advised our schedulers to not schedule that. But I mean, it's a lot of learning that we're all doing, and from my previous conversation and from what I'm seeing with Patricia, I think you're going to be a strong partner. DPW is a very public-facing office. I don't have to tell you that. The main concerns that we get, at least from my neighbors, is potholes, trash, snow plowing. So those are all up your alley. I'm looking to be a strong advocate for those issues on the council. On the second comment I have, I'm glad that you acknowledge that if just looking on paper, your resume with the job, it doesn't really add up. But I think once folks hear you speak and hear kind of your vision and your priorities, I think you'll be a good leader for that department. And I'm happy that you're here and looking forward to working with you.
Me too. Thank you. Counselor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm really, really excited about your background and your appointment. You've got an extraordinary background, as you shared here. I'm just very eager to hear more about, so you mentioned technology. And I just want to share that, over the summer, we did a citywide survey where we elicited ideas on what we could do to improve quality of life. We had over 600 people participate in this, and we crowdsourced a number of ideas. One of the great ideas when we were providing recommendations, it was a quality of life plan that we released around, what are the challenges that we're experiencing in the city, and how do we directly address those challenges around whether it's illegal dumping, graffiti, et cetera. One of the great ideas that came up was a public score. And there are other municipalities that are actually implementing this. So it builds on 311, where every time DPW goes out to fill a pothole, or every time they go out to take care of graffiti, the person who makes that request or files that ticket will then get a customer service survey afterward that allows them to say, you know what, DPW should get an A on this performance, DPW should get a B on this performance, maybe a C on this performance. If you go into the mall and you buy a cell phone, you interact with the customer service agent, you're going to get a survey after that interaction that says, what was your interaction like with that person that you interacted with? I'd be really curious to see something like that implemented to ensure that there's more public accountability, but to also make sure that if there are any discrepancies between the performance of the work that's being done and what the constituent perceives is the work that's being done, and how we could address that. So let's say if there's a specific department that gets an A consistently, that means they're doing a good job. But if there's a department that we're seeing, a division, I should say, that's consistently getting a C, what can we do to address that issue? I'm just curious to hear your take on a public score system and some metric of accountability on DPW-related issues.
I think that's a really interesting idea. Because of my prior life and semi-PTSD that I have dealing with some labor issues, I immediately, my antenna went up over whether this might be something that could present an issue union-wise. I don't think so, but it's just something that immediately came to mind. But I like the idea of that post-service survey. How do we do? And you're right, you do that everywhere. Everywhere you go, they hit you with a survey by email or something afterwards, or a phone call. How did we do? I'd love to be able to have that data. And I think that's a great idea. That's something I'm definitely gonna bring back and talk about with the staff.
And the other, thank you for sharing that. The last quick thing here is, I'm really eager to hear how we become more predictive and proactive as opposed to being reactive. You're seeing municipalities all across the country utilize things like artificial intelligence to get a sense of if there's going to be graffiti that constantly comes up in your ward or on this specific building, how can we can utilize the data that we have to go out there and be largely, predictive or even proactive to prevent it from happening in the first place. What's your take on something like that?
I think obviously that gets down to working smarter rather than harder. Or my old boss, my mentor, A.T. Wall, used to say, I'm so busy fighting the alligators that I don't have time to drain the swamp. You know what I mean? So instead of washing the building off every week, can we figure out how to prevent it in the first place? And what does that look like? Believe it or not, that's transferable from corrections. We're always trying to prevent the bad thing from happening in the first place, so we don't have to deal with the after effects. And I definitely think that's a mindset that we should have in government anyway. And so, yeah, that's something I would be very interested in. One thing is, however, though, you have to crawl before you walk and run. And I think the needs of the department in terms of resources are such that before we can get there, we need to beef that resource and staffing up before we can shoot higher.
Absolutely. thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you, and thank you enough for
Thank you.
your service.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, with that, may I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Patricia A. Coinfee as the Director of the Department of Public Works.
Second. Okay, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Anderbaugh. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you so much. I think we have our last appointment.
Oh, man.
Mr. Wilkinson. Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you please read the agenda item first? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Item number 7, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 13, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1011 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31, passed in 1987, he is this day reappointing Steve Wilkinson of 18 Knapsack Road, Warwick, Rhode Island, 02818, as a mechanical engineer member of the Building Board of Review for a term to expire on January 31st, 2028, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Mr. Wilkinson, welcome. Please swear in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and your title for the record, please.
Robert Stephen Wilkinson, member, Building Board of Review, mechanical engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilkinson, and I hope you still want to serve after we've made you wait this long for your.
Very interesting.
Well, okay. If you could just give us a brief outline of your experience and maybe a little bit about why you want to continue serving on the Building Board of Review.
So I'm a lifelong resident of Rhode Island, a 1979 graduate of the University of Rhode Island's College of Engineering, following which I joined the family firm founded by my grandfather with roots in engineering in Rhode Island going back to the 40s. As Wilkinson Associates, we've existed since the early 70s, after my father and grandfather divided from a Boston accounting firm. Most of my work is in Rhode Island, and most of my Rhode Island work is in Providence. We work typically on commercial properties. Residential work is mostly limited to larger scale projects, community housing, apartments, things like that, but a lot of college and university work. So we provide design services, plumbing, fire protection, and HVAC systems. So this is also my third time appearing before this committee, and I enjoy providing my service to the Building Board of Review, which is made up of design professionals and construction professionals, kind of assisting effective, proper construction in the city, helping the code officials interpret more of the gray areas of the code. Sometimes intelligent compromise is required to move the projects through the building permit process. So that's what we do. I enjoy it. My past experience in all kinds of different buildings. The windows of Providence, I see all my children in buildings. Been at it again for quite a long time, so I've had experience in an awful lot of different disciplines across the city.
Would you mind just explaining what business comes before your board?
Typically, matters are referred to our board through the building department. When there's an area where there's a non-compliance to the written letter of the building code with respect to a property. We hear a lot of cases where there's conversion of properties that have been listed as two-family, but they've been existing as three-family for generations. So we'll look at that while it's a non-conforming use with sort of a grandfather flavor to it. will look at the property, will actually tour the property to view the actual conditions with respect to safety. How can it effectively be a three-family house? What has to happen to allow that to happen? And it's typically issues that are interrelated between the design trades of architecture, structural engineering, and mechanical engineering, mostly about life safety, proper egress, proper fire rating of egress passages, things like that. Other things we'll get involved with commercial nature would be buildings with structural issues that might be, imminent failure might be might be about to happen, and instead of taking the property from the owner, will help them, what will help the building official actually. So what do you have to do to allow this to happen? That becomes part of the permit process to let the building either exist or be condemned. Other issues about proximity of buildings to property lines we'll get involved with. Not too much. The only non-conforming use we hear most is this 2 to 3 family change, because it's very popular in the state. And there's other little gray areas inside of the fire code frequently. The conversion of the Narragansett power plant had an issue about sprinkler placement in a certain area that wasn't addressed directly by the code, so we had to make a decision about things like that. So that's what we do. So we're sort of between building department and the permit.
Good.
So we're
And how often do you meet?
typically once a month. With COVID, that slowed down a lot. But it's typically once a month. There are 4 professional members on the board presently. There's room for a 5th with an electrical specialty, but there's been tremendous difficulty in filling that position.
Well, thank you, because I just didn't know what your board did, so thank you very much. Questions from committee members? Great. I am very, very appreciative that you would like to continue serving on this very important board, so thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for waiting all this long time to
Very
address
interesting
us. May I entertain a motion?
Make a motion, we reappoint Steve Wilkinson to the building board of review.
Secondly.
Motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I really appreciate you coming tonight. Madam Clerk, item number 8.
Item number 8, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21-26B1 of the Code of Ordinances. Shawmut Design and Constructions, Department of Public Property, $11,187,125.
Who do we have presenting this evening?
Madam Chair, Jonathan Martin again. I'll be joined by Deputy Director of Public Property, Madam Pontarelli, and Mr. Joe Desani from Downs Construction.
Great, Madam Clerk, can you please swear in the 2 that haven't been sworn in?
I have, an exhibit.
Can you pass that up while we're...
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your full name and titles for the record, please.
Amanda Pontarelli, Deputy Director of Public Property.
Joseph DeSanti, Director of Project Management, Downs Construction.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for waiting. It's been some long meetings, I do apologize. Before we start, I'd like to mark as Exhibit 9, the Hope High School Auditorium and Cupola document that has just been handed to us. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Great, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Pro Tem Pichardo. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So as you can see from the document before you, this is about a project at Hope High School. We're here before you tonight. This is one of 4 projects that are currently ongoing where there was a clerical error in terms of the dollar amount. It was passed through the process previously just for phase 1. So that's why we're back before you as a team with the correct dollar amount for the total project. There will be 3 more similar instances like this that will come before you, and we think from that point, the deck will be cleared in terms of having made up those fixed those clerical errors that occurred before the members of the team were part of this process.
Can we just add an explanation of the clerical error one more time?
Amanda?
When it was originally awarded in January of 2022, they awarded it for $515,000, which was just the construction manager's fee, and they failed to include the construction budget of $6.1 million. And then after that, there was added scope and to the lobby and the cupola, and that brought it to $11.1 million. So we're just correcting all these letters.
Okay, all right. And then, Madam Auditor, is there something, I mean, is there a procedure that we amend, or is this just treated as a new item, or?
No, it's a new item. It's a new item. They just amended actually the original of 515,000. It was already awarded as that. Again, this was just referred to the city council because it exceeded the $500,000 threshold, and it's a change order over 20%. But
Okay, and if we can just have a brief description of the project and where you are with it.
Turn over to Mr. Desani.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, thank you for coming again.
So we do have a brief presentation here. So a lot of the original costs were for abatement. The original auditorium had not been in use for many, many years. There was actually only one light in that auditorium the first time I went in there about 1.5 years ago. It was not used at all, which was unfortunate because it is a beautiful facility. So that was the initial scope of work that we're doing, which we called phase 1. During that process, we go to the next page, we determined that if we're going to fix the auditorium and have that as a beautiful performing arts space, we want a nice welcoming lobby as well. So that also became part of it. Now, that lobby ended up getting done first, just because there were some challenges with the auditorium. Number one, there was some lead time with some new heat and air conditioning equipment, which has taken longer, and electrical equipment. Additionally, what we wanted to do is update the life safety system there too, so fire sprinklers. Once the contractor was on site and did the water test, it was determined that the previous water pressure that was given by Providence Water was incorrect, and that we needed to install a water pump for the sprinkler system to work correctly. So that was sort of part of the other thing that we had to do some investigation on. At the conclusion, we're going to have a new performing arts auditorium with new seating, with motorized shades, and we're going to have all the acoustic redone in there as well, and we'll also have heating and air conditioning, which it does not at this point. So it'll be fully operational. We actually went to a meeting yesterday with some of the administration at Hope, and they're looking and excited about, they're talking about now getting staff there to get a new performing arts program going again. So they're all very excited about it. But overall, that's where the project stands. The entire project should be substantially complete, including the restoration of the cupola in the spring of 2023.
How many seats are in that auditorium? You know,
approximately. I don't know exactly, but I'm thinking around 600, but we will get back and let you know for sure.
And then just one final question. All the area that behind on the stage and that whole area is also been rehabbed.
Yes, we're doing the stage, and on the seating, we are removing some seats so we have accessibility, so we could have individuals go with wheelchairs and provide that as well. So there's going to be less seating than there is currently, but we are restoring some of the seats as well. But yeah, the back area as well is something we're looking at to make sure that we have support for the stage. We're doing curtains and some theater lighting as well.
I'm thrilled because this is in my ward. And I mean, this, for those of you who have not seen this space, wait till you see the space. I mean, it is going to be one of our big performing arts centers. Our auditorium will be a community, a true community space for the entire city, because there's not many spaces this size that can accommodate as many people. And I'm just thrilled that this project is being completed, because I think it's really was lost with this space, which is really, again, a community space. So I'm thrilled. Do we have any questions? Okay, Pro Tem.
If I may say, thank you, Madam Chair. I did take the opportunity to attend the open house when you gave the tour.
Yeah.
And it is an undertaking. It's a beautiful building. Kind of grew up around it. Didn't attend Hope, but was there many times speaking to students when I was back then. Pleasant, Gilbert Stewart have similar, and Roger Williams have similar auditoriums. So it's a unique architecture, and also just pleased to see that it's being rehabbed, and it's gonna cost almost $12 million, is that pretty much? Yeah. So I was appreciative of just seeing the work. I was stated for the committee is that more and more I'm looking at these contracts having zero MBE participation and WBE. Things have been rolling and so forth. We as a city need to do a better job on with the companies and even ourselves to increase participation within these districts. I think that for too long, these numbers have been within the state and even locally, that pretty much is in many areas that it's unacceptable to see even, 0% at this level. So I just wanted to state that. I think that we somehow, somewhere we had this discussion, and hopefully in the near future, we can continue to see these numbers increase. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but.
If you allow me, I definitely want
Sure.
to respond. So one thing I do want to note is you did mention some of those other schools. One thing that I want the council to know is that when we go in and do a auditorium over, we create a program, we create standards, right? So we use this light fixture. So if we want to go to a Mount Pleasant, if we want to go to Roger Williams and there's an auditorium, we have the parts and pieces already, we know what the costs are. So we've all done that hard work ahead of time, so it's much easier to go on and now renovate that other space. And we're doing that with all the media centers right now, all the elementary schools, which is, we're creating that program, bringing the librarians in, what's the best program that you could do? So it's the cost-effective way to do it. As far as participation by minority, women, and we have been pushing that aggressively. The numbers have significantly changed here, as with all of the construction projects right now. And we're in the process of pulling together a report, and we will hope in the near future we'll be able to bring a report that shows some significant change and an increase to those percentages as well.
Thank you.
As well as residents. I want to get residents working.
We will be very eager to see that. So as soon as that's ready, please let us know so we can get you right back in here and discuss that.
Okay, we're this close with Narducci, which is a perfect one to start with. So we'll have that first, and I'll work with Director Martin on that. Yeah.
And veterans.
Okay,
Yeah.
Councilor,
Just an
Councilor
FYI,
Taylor.
Google has 1,285 seats in the auditorium.
It's really nice.
In case anyone want to know, Google has it.
Yeah, we reduced it because of the handicap accessibility. I think it's
before.
Yeah, I think it's less. Yeah, whatever it is. I'm glad Google knows it.
No seats for you, though.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions? May I have a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
Is that a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay. No second. Thank you.
Move.
Motion to approve number 8.
From Councilor Taylor, seconded by Pro Tem Chardo. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to kept you so long.
Thanks for your waiting.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, item number 9.
Item number 9, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with Section 21-26B1 of the Code of Ordinances. R. Sopo Corporation, Department of Public Works, $1,543,770.
What do we have? We have Director Boyne, is it Faye?
Faye.
Okay, Faye.
Thank you.
Hey.
That's okay.
Okay, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, requires committee approval due to the dollar amount. This is the, it's not a sole source. There were 3 bidders, but 2 withdrew. So this is the winning bidder. This has to do with 2 hydraulic gates that are part of the hurricane barrier that separate, that close off a sewer line from the city. And the gates are moved by hydraulics, and the hydraulics have failed. And this is an alarm that's been sounded by NBC and the Narragansett Bay Commission following inspections, regular inspections done by the Army Corps of Engineers for a number of years. Apparently, and I'm not intimately familiar with the history, but apparently this project has been funded and then defunded a couple of times, but it's certainly very emergent. God forbid these gates fail in a flooding or hurricane emergency, Providence could be in a lot of trouble. And so we're very happy to finally get this moving. It's our intention with committee approval to award the contract in February and then begin construction and begin to work on it as soon as, I think DOT has a wintertime moratorium that candidly, I'm not horribly familiar with how that works, but the engineers that work at DPW told me that once that moratorium is lifted, which I don't think will be very long, then the work can begin.
Wonderful. All right, any questions from the committee? Yes, Councilor Engelbach.
Thank you. Do you have a sense of why the other 2 pulled out of why they withdrew?
I don't. One, I was told, I'm not sure why the first one that pulled out. The second one apparently indicated that they knew that they were just going to be off the charts in terms of their dollar amount, and they weren't going to be able to really be competitive, and so they decided to drop.
Okay, thank you.
Just along those
Yes,
lines.
Pro Tem Pichardo, please.
So out of the 3, is this the lowest one?
I know it's lower than the second one. I don't know how it compared to the first one. I'm not sure if the first one made it even that far in the process that we knew what their number was.
Okay.
Not positive about that, so.
Any more questions? Great, I have a motion.
Make a motion that we approve number 9.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good job on your first
I know,
presentation.
right?
Yeah.
Make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Not yet.
It's fine. We have no more business. If we have no more business before this meeting, may I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, then a second. It's okay.
At
Let's go.
8:30.
Motion made by
Second.
Councilor Taylor, seconded by Pro Tem Pichardo.
All right, now.
All right.
No chance.
Hey, 2.5 hours, it's all right.
Yeah.